interact with your content more because they think, hey, this company can solve a problem that I don't know how to solve. And that, I think, is really like where the value comes in.
Welcome to Duo On Air, where we help you get seen, remembered, and wildly obsessed over by your audience. We're your hosts, Abby
and Courtney, a pair of ex-agency besties who ditched the cubicles, the Minneapolis skyways, and the corporate jargon for work that matters, with people who inspire us every day. Today, we're a women-powered marketing agency serving brands worldwide, bringing those big agency results without the corporate price tag.
Around here, it's all about what actually grows your business: branding, SEO, websites, and navigating the real-life ups and downs of building a dream while raising tiny humans. We're moms, wives, and best friend business partners in the trenches with you, making the hard stuff feel easy and a whole lot more fun.
So pour a fresh cup, get comfy, because you're exactly where you need to be.
Let's duo this.
Welcome back to the Duo On Air podcast. This is episode number 203, and today we have special guest Kennedy Smith on to talk all things social. From creating content to imposter syndrome to staying true to who you are, we'll talk about it all. So if you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or simply terrified of social media, this episode is going to be packed full of goodies for you. Hello, Kennedy, and thank you so much for being on the Duo On Air podcast. We're so excited to have you on today.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and excited to chat with you and geek out on all things social.
Yes. I think our audience is going to absolutely love this. We used to offer social back in the day, like years ago, and we don't do that anymore. And I feel like we have so much to learn in this space too, especially when it comes to content creation. So I think this is going to be such a great conversation, and I'm so excited. So, everybody, this is Kennedy Smith. She's the founder and head of digital marketing at KSC Agency. And like we just said, we're going to talk a lot about social today, content marketing, and hopefully answer some burning questions that you guys have had for a while. And just with the landscape of social and content, I feel like everything is always changing. And now that like, how do I use AI? How much do I do? How much don't I do? So we're going to touch on some of those topics today. So before we dive in, though, we'd love to hear a bit about your journey with content creation and just a little bit more about you. So I'm going to hand it over to you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yes, well, thank you again for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I love chatting with people about marketing because I just totally geek out on it. But my journey with marketing and content creation started about 5 years ago. So I kind of started out freelancing. I was working with a lot of local yoga studios, just doing their social media because I think, circa 2020, 2019, social media and like blogging really started to kind of blow up. And like short form video content, especially with like reels being introduced. And that was something that I was seeing in the space. And I was just like, this is so cool. And I wanted to learn more about it. And I started implementing it for my own platform. And then I would go, I'm an avid wellness enthusiast. So I was going to these yoga studios and, a lot of the yoga studios I was going to, the owners were a little bit older and they just didn't really know how to use social. And me just being passionate about it, I was like, oh my gosh, let me help you. Like I've been learning all these different things. Let me get your hand or get my hands on your account. And so then I would kind of do just like trade off. Basically, I would do their social and they would give me, a complimentary membership. And yeah, I just started doing content creation for them and building up their platform. And it was just really crazy to see like the power of social media and how we could get people in for events and yoga classes and really just spread brand awareness. And so from then, I just started making connections in the yoga studio, outside of the yoga studio. I did go to school for digital marketing out in Los Angeles at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, which is actually now bought out by ASU, Arizona State. But I just learned so much from working with local businesses. And then essentially one thing kind of led to the other. And after working with these local businesses and my name kind of just got around and people just started coming to me being like, I heard you're the social media girl, what can you do for us? And it's really been a journey with just kind of learning, what businesses are looking for and just kind of seeing how every business is different. Like, this business isn't going to need exactly what this business needs. Like sometimes people just need the strategy. They're just like, hey, I have a team, but we don't necessarily have a direction. Like, can you provide us with that direction just so we can hit the ground running? And then there are other people who need, the full suite of social and content creation. They need photo, they need video, they need the strategy, they need someone actually posting and engaging, and making sure that, we're set, a month in advance, even a quarter in advance. So there's really a lot of different levels of need of social and content creation. And I think, that's something that makes our agency special is we're able to hone in on that because we are a small team. We don't just sell, one specific package to companies. We're very flexible with needs and pricing, and our ultimate goal is just to be able to, deliver to clients what exactly they need. I always say like we're very solution oriented. So yeah, like if you don't need the whole shebang of social, like the content creation and the management, then it's like you don't have to get that. We can just kind of have a strategy meeting and get you going in the right direction. But so, fast forward 5 years later, and we're here today. So, yeah, our agency, we offer social media, but then we also offer, more of the video production side. We have a video production agency in house, and we're able to deliver clients more of that high end video content. But then, if they're looking for something smaller, we can also do iPhone content. So that's kind of something I've been learning up to this point is, a lot of different people. They don't need the same things. Some people need the higher quality video production. Some people are just cool with iPhone if it's a smaller business. So that's really allowed us to just be very, I think I would say we're pretty niche in that area just because we're very flexible and, it all just comes down to what the business wants.
Mhm. That's really refreshing to hear you say that you offer like a wide range of like what somebody might need. And it's so interesting to hear you say too, like it could be on your iPhone or like we could do this full
Right.
video production of like behind the scenes or recording things within your business to feature that on social. I think sometimes a lot of people get really hung up on like what to post, how should I post?
Hmm.
Do I need to do video? Can I just do, static or stories or carousels or what it might be? And I think when we all show up to the social world, we feel like we have to do it all and we have to do
Right.
it the way that like everybody is telling us to do it on social or just we're seeing everybody out there, similar businesses or friends or whatever it might be and we're like, "Oh my gosh, I have to show up like that." But that's not
Right.
necessarily true.
Exactly.
And so that's just nice that you offer that range to your clients for like, okay, you want to just do this, we can do that. You want to, go all the way, we can do that. So it's really refreshing to hear that like not one size fits all and we don't have to do exactly what everybody else is
Exactly.
doing
Yes,
out there.
totally, 100%. And I think that's, for everyone, if you're a business owner or if working internally in a marketing team for a business, I think that's always something to keep in mind is it's like your strategy is going to be different than everyone else's.
Hmm.
And just because someone else is posting, 5, 6 times a week with short form video, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to, as long as you have a solid strategy that kind of suits your business goals. That's really all you need in order to kind of figure out what the next step is.
Yes. So you say strategy. I want to bring that to the top here. So, do you often see a lot of clients coming to you kind of like frustrated or confused because they're like, "Hey, I'm doing all of the things. I'm posting X amount of times a day, whatever it might be," but they aren't backed by strategy. So, is that something that you see often with your clients or just in social in general? Is that people are out there, they're doing the thing, they're posting, they're feeling exhausted, but they lack that strategy and they just didn't realize that social also needs its own strategy because it's not just posting, I don't want to say
Right.
posting and ghosting. I know that's kind of a term that we used to use in the past, but
Hmm.
I feel like sometimes we see that disconnect between showing up and showing up with strategy versus showing up without strategy. So can
Right.
you talk to our audience a little bit about why that strategy is so important?
Yeah, so strategy is super important. This is kind of crazy, but I always compare not having a strategy to just running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Like if you don't
Hmm.
have a strategy to create posts and videos and, static content from, then it's like the question is, do you even know why you're posting? Like who are you actually speaking to? Like what is the actual goal of posting? You could post 7 to 8 videos a week, but if you're not entirely sure of like the audience you're, speaking to, and then it's like what they want to get out of your business, you're probably not going to end up driving a whole bunch of engagement on your platform, or to your website or wherever you're trying to convert that traffic from. So my biggest recommendation and the things that I always do with my clients is we do, the strategy is always the very first thing that we nail down. So we'll meet, we'll discuss their goals, we'll discuss, target audience, demographics. The biggest thing for me also is just asking people, what is your goal? Because a lot of the times people forget. They just, they get in their heads and they get in their minds, oh my gosh, I have to post 8 times a week on social. But in the end, the real question is, what is your goal? What are you trying to do for your business? Are you trying to, get people to sign up for a course? Are you trying to get people in the door for, for example, I don't know, Botox injections? It's like, what are you trying to do with these postings and with this content? So that's kind of what I recommend nailing down first. And then kind of a mindset shift that I've learned to adapt to, and I always kind of, working with my team and working with my clients, is just you have to always remember to put yourself in your audience's shoes. So it's like if you're marketing to this audience, but this audience doesn't know about your brand, they don't know about your services, how can you speak to them and how can you educate them on your value, why you're different, and how you can help solve whatever their problem is? So I think that's kind of the biggest thing with social. And when it comes to content strategies, it's just, it really is solution oriented. It's like see a need, fill a need, right? Like the audience, they have some sort of need, and sometimes they might not even know. Like, for example, in the wellness space, it's like maybe someone has been feeling groggy or anxious, bloated. They don't know that they need this wellness service, but if your brand can hit those pain points and provide a solution, they're obviously going to build trust with you. They're going to start following you. They're going to interact with your content more because they think, hey, this company can solve a problem that I don't know how to solve. And that I think is really like where the value comes in.
Mhm. I love that you said that because I think we forget that when it comes to creating content for social, particularly. We want it to be a fun space, which it can be, and it is, but we also have to realize that this is something where we're doing a lot of educating or, trying to solve a solution or a problem that our audience has. And
Exactly.
I love that you mentioned like put yourself in your audience's shoes, which is sometimes easier said than done, right? Because you
Right.
are running your brand and your business and you're like, you're
Hmm.
so in it that it's hard to kind of remove yourself and act as
Totally.
if, like act as your audience. But I think
Hmm.
that's such a good reminder to kind of do that every once in a while because if you landed on it and you aren't solving that question or that problem that they have, and it's even maybe like a little confusing to you where you're like, if this wasn't my brand, does this make sense? Like if I don't know the brand. So I think even just like sometimes what we do at Duo Collective is we do surveys every once in a while, just on
Hmm.
our audience. So we'll put it in our stories. It'll just be a Google link to a survey, and we ask our audience, like, are you enjoying the content that we're creating? Is it resonating with you? Are we answering any problems that you have that you're looking for us to educate you on? So sometimes even just doing those surveys is really helpful. We've found it to be really helpful. So
Totally.
just a small tip that anybody can do out there too. But
Yeah, no,
so
that's definitely awesome. And then another thing I kind of wanted to throw in there.
mhm,
So I think, when it comes to content, something that I've found that definitely helps with figuring out, okay, what kinds of content do we want to be posting? I always focus on three main pillars, which normally I would say maybe it applies to like 90% of businesses. But we want to make sure that we're, diversifying the types of content as well. Cause it's like
mhm,
you don't want to go posting all these like trends and like humorous posts and then you forget about the actual education part of your brand. So I
exactly.
always recommend focusing on like three core content pillars, which are educational, awareness, and then more of the trendy, day in my life, that kind of content. And then with educational comes, it's like providing value, solving problems. And then with the awareness side of things comes, company awareness, service awareness, product awareness. It's like, how can we spread awareness about who we are as a brand or company to the audience? And then more on the trendy thing or on the trendy side of things is, that fun content where it's like it's not necessarily conversion oriented, but you're just still, you're playing the social game, you're playing the algorithm game, you're following up on the trends, you're using the trending audio. So I think having all three of those kinds of content kind of mixed into your strategy is a really great way to keep your people entertained, to keep them coming back to your page because it's not necessarily like they know what's coming next because you're always providing kind of just a plethora of different types of content. And then, I think always circling back to your audience and just making sure that you're putting yourself in their shoes, what would they want to see? And then just keeping that top of mind, when it comes to providing value. So that's something I would definitely recommend for content is just keeping those three things in mind just to keep things fresh. And so, nothing gets too repetitive or predictable.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great tip. We'll put these all in the show notes too. So if you're
Cool.
driving and listening or something, you can always go back to the show notes and kind of hone in on those three content pillars, whether or not you have them right now, or sometimes people I think have a plethora of content pillars, which can also get kind of confusing because things can then start
Hmm.
to get a little muddy. So I think honing in for sure on those three that you just mentioned is super smart. So small business owners often feel really overwhelmed by how much content that they should be producing, which I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure all of your clients that you've worked with have been there to some
Oh,
capacity.
yeah.
'Cause social is a beast. So how do you define enough content for real growth without that burnout or without that exhaustion? And I'm so sure that this can change from client to client, but I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed because they feel like they constantly have to be pushing out all of this content in order to feel some sort of a real growth. But sometimes we start to hit that exhaustion or that burnout before we see any growth, and we kind of just like give up, or we feel like we're failing when it comes to
Right.
content creation or showing up on social. So
Right.
how like what should the kind of, again, this is kind of a shooting in the dark question, but like how would you define enough content for like strong growth?
Yeah, I would say for me, and just over, the past couple of years working with clients, I've found that 3 posts a week is kind of the sweet spot. It's not too much, it's not too little. I would say at minimum 3 posts a week, and that could be, obviously trying to get as much video, short form video content as you can for those 3 posts, and then also throwing those on stories 3 times a week. So then it's like you have your 3 posts, you put that on stories, then you have 3 story posts a week. And then if you could even pop in 1 or 2 extra story posts with call to action links. So, for example, if you're a service based business, throw on a story post that is highlighting a promo you have or highlighting a service of the week, and you have a call to action link to, book the service or inquire about the service. But I really do think like 3 posts, it's doable. Especially if you have like a partner agency or social media manager to work with you. But that is kind of like what I've found is the sweet spot. I've done 4 to 5 posts a week for clients and it just gets crazy,
Yeah.
on my side and on their side, because then it comes to the fact, when you're working with someone for social, it's a partnership and you do have to make sure that everything is getting approved and if there's any edits. So when there's, 6 pieces of content a week, it's like, okay, if we get behind on the approval process, then we're piling up, maybe 7 to 8 posts for the next week. And then it just kind of gets crazy. But I think 3 posts and separating it out, you could do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or take a look at your analytics and see who, what kind of engagement you're getting on what days. I just personally love that number. And I've definitely seen my clients have growth with that number. Something that I do encourage as well, if you are working with an agency or a social media manager and you kind of give them the reins for social, you know, if you truly don't have the time to be doing anything at all on social, that's totally fine. But I think also still being active on your social accounts, TikTok, Instagram, even doing like talking head style story posts if you're a, business owner or even if you're just part of the team, I think that's always super helpful to kind of throw in the mix as well. For example, we're working with a beauty lounge right now and we do 3 posts a week for them. But then we'll also have some of the girls who work there throw on stories their availability for the week. And then sometimes they offer nail services. So they'll post, nails that they did that day. So it's like we have that set, bare like the minimum of 3 posts a week, but then we're also kind of getting some things sprinkled in here and there. So it's like a good mix to kind of look at whole picture wise. But yeah, I would say 3 posts would kind of be ideal. If you have super impactful short form video content, you might even be able to get away with 2, but I would kind of say 3 is the sweet spot.
Mhm. Oh man, would that be great? Just 2 high impactful videos a week.
Right, right. We would all love that.
Yes, oh, I'm sure you would. Okay, so we're in the middle of a launch right now, and when this is airs, the launch will be over. But I'm kind of curious when it comes to, let's say you are working with a client that is launching a new product or
Mhm,
launching a new service or a course, which is what we would just have finished up. Do you suggest upping that during those periods, whether or not like it's a course that's for a limited time or it's a new service or it's a new product? When stuff like that launches or has like a set launch period, would you suggest more than what you typically post? So let's say you do the 3 a week, but during a product launch or a launch window, would you suggest doing 5 a week, 2 a day for 3 days
mhm.
a week? I'm just curious, like, do you find it beneficial and do you see the strategy behind pushing more content out during those times? Or does that again get a little overwhelming for the audience?
Honestly, I say the more the merrier, right? Especially if you're launching something. They say it takes the average person 8 times to actually fully process and like take action for something and remember that they've seen that before. So when it comes to launching, products, courses, whatever that may be, I do think to post more is a good strategy just because you are hitting the audience more with your offering, you're top of mind. And even if they do see it 2 or 3 times, they're probably not going to remember that they actually saw it until they see it fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would definitely, post. I think it also comes down to like the content that you are posting. So what are you posting? If you're posting the same kind of messaging, 5 to 6 times a week, then that might get a little bit redundant. But
Mhm.
if you have a solid strategy of like, okay, we're going to tease it a little bit, just say something new is coming, but not exactly say what. And then maybe the next week we're dropping a little hint and we're saying, hey, we've been noticing a lot of people dealing with X problem. We're developing X solution. And then maybe the next week, then you kind of get into the meat of the launch and you go into, okay, here's the problem that you guys have been dealing with. It's official. We're launching, X
Mhm.
service or X course to solve that problem. And then you can kind of get into the nitty gritty of the details of it, whatever the pricing may look like, if there's like a promo for launch. Um, but just to kind of make sure that it's like the content verbiage isn't necessarily repetitive. I
Mhm.
think that's kind of what it comes down to is just again, we keep circling back to the strategy. It's really just the strategy behind the content that you are posting.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that the idea of like teasing it too. So like
Totally.
don't just get to launch and then all of a sudden you're talking about it because your audience could be like, wait, whoa, where did this come from? So like tease it
Right.
a couple weeks prior, and then when
Yes.
you get to the actual launch, you can really lean
Yes.
into it.
And I will say, I honestly think one of the best examples I've seen, of the tease of a launch is Rosalia. She's a Spanish artist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she just launched a recent album, and the marketing for that album was absolutely insane. So, what she did is she started teasing the album a couple months before, and she did it in a super, super creative way. She would drop like the yeah, I don't know the exact terminology for it, but like the lyrical notes or the music notes for some of her songs, and she would just post it,
Mhm.
no caption. And people who were musicians, they would see this and they'd start playing it on their violin or playing it on their guitar. And they're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, this is such a beautiful song, such a beautiful melody. What's coming? Is she going to drop an album? And she just kept doing little things like that. And then, she would be posting pictures of like the vibe of her album, which was very like, heavenly, spiritual. She'd be posting all these things. And, everyone was just kind of left wanting more. Like they wanted to know, oh my gosh, what's happening? What's coming? This is so exciting. And then when she kind of got into the actual launch phase, I mean, everyone just lost it. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, I totally saw that coming. Like, but she really just took her audience through this whole like experience. Like it was an emotional experience. And, it really had like a point A and a point Z. Like she took them through every single point of just the anticipation of something coming. So I think definitely if you aren't familiar with Rosalia and her music, go check her out. She's awesome. But that recent album that she dropped, the marketing behind it was just, I mean, absolutely incredible.
That's great. I love that you shared that example. We'll put that in the show notes, and now I'm eager to go peek at that too.
It's
Um,
very interesting.
yeah, you almost create like I don't like a small movement when it comes to stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Like people wake up in the morning and they're like, "Oh, I want to go check out her Instagram or, her TikTok or whatever to see if she's dropped anything else." So like you get people excited and you build that anticipation where they want to come back every day to see if you've posted something new to like
exactly.
follow along that journey to that final launch or whatever. So that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course, yeah.
So, kind of back to that strategy, I feel like a lot of people get hung up on showing up authentically or genuine while also weaving in their strategy. That's a hard thing to do sometimes. So, can you walk us through a framework you use for creating content that feels genuine but still strategic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it really just comes back to your why. So if you're a business, it's like, why are you doing what you're doing? What do you want to accomplish? And I think too, if you're more of like a content creator, really just coming down to your why, because, the truth is like the industry is so saturated right now and it's only going to get more saturated.
Mhm.
So being able to just stay true to your passion and to your why is really, really important. Obviously we're all posting on social because we want to grow our business and get more visibility and, generate more customers or clients or whatever that may be. But really just coming back to the why. It's like, why am I doing this? Why did I start doing this? Ultimately, like, what is my goal? Do I want to impact lives? Do I want to inspire people? Do I want to motivate people? Especially on the content creator side of things. It's like, how am I unique from other content creators? Is there a way that I can edit my videos differently? Everyone's using CapCut right now, everyone and their mother, to edit videos. So it's like, how can I maybe still use CapCut, but then make my video clips like different or more unique? Or how can I get away from the templated things that everyone else is doing? So I think really just kind of trying to capitalize on your own uniqueness, because deep down, we're all different. We all are unique and we all have our unique why. So really just circling back to that, using verbiage that's true and authentic to yourself. I think that's kind of the biggest thing when you are doing content, especially if you're a content creator.
Mhm. So that brings me to my next question that I think a lot of people also struggle with is comparison or perfectionism. So the world of social, I feel like everybody's comparing or they're trying to be like somebody else. Or you're trying to show up perfectly because you want your grid to look perfect and you want to sound
Right.
on social and you want people to like believe that you've got all of your stuff together and
Right.
everything is just like smooth, right? Um,
Mhm.
so how do you stay grounded and true to your voice amidst all of that noise?
You know, as it sounds easier, it's easier said than done, I would
Right,
say.
right.
Obviously, I think we all catch ourselves getting stuck in the doom scroll and getting stuck in comparing. And, really it just comes down to, it's like, how are you taking care of your mental well-being? Like, how can we kind of avoid getting stuck in that comparison loophole? Whether that's like spending less time scrolling on TikTok or spending less time scrolling on Instagram, and just kind of remembering that it's like everyone is on their own path and you are exactly where you're supposed to be. You are doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so is the person that you're comparing yourself to. It's like they're in their spot, you're in your spot. And, you have, again, it kind of ties back to the previous point, but it's like you have your unique why,
Mhm.
and you're doing what you're meant to be doing. So it's like, how can you share that word with people? For me personally, I've caught myself getting stuck in that like comparison game when it comes to building my business, when it comes to posting content, even like content for my clients. I see other businesses. I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to be doing this. But then it's like, okay, ground yourself, take a deep breath. Why are you doing what you're doing? How are you impacting people? And like, I think it's still okay to use other people for inspiration, right? So maybe even looking at other people's content and just being like, oh, I like the way they edit or I like their messaging. How can I kind of take pieces of that for my content creation or my business? But yeah, I think kind of just limiting yourself to getting stuck in the doom scroll. I've been there, I've felt it. I'll even catch myself like scrolling, and then I literally have to just stop myself and be like, okay, this isn't actually beneficial to me anymore because I feel myself starting to feel anxious and, worried and hesitant. And then as soon as I feel that, I just put my phone down. I'm like, nope, no more, moving on to the next task or whatever it may be.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's all good tips. I think something that I've always struggled with too, which I'd be curious your thoughts. I do a lot of the social for Duo Collective, the
Mhm.
creating of it, the the swipes, the reels, all of that stuff. And being a designer and a creative myself, I get so hung up on what our grid looks like. I'll just
Mm.
pull up our grid and I'll look at it, whether it's on desktop or mobile, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, is it perfect? Oh no, we used like two of the same color next to each other, or like we used this template too many times. So I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, do you see a lot of people getting really hung up on stuff
Oh, yeah.
like grid look? And how important is that? Because it's probably not like super, not as important as what we maybe think it is or put like our pressure
Exactly.
on ourselves. I think obviously it's more of that content, and because also again I'd be curious like how many people are actually going to your profile and like looking at your feed and your grid and like making a judgment based off of that. So I'm just kind of curious your
Exactly.
thoughts, how you deal with
My
that with clients and like where you stand as far as like that grid perfection.
Totally. And I mean, this is something that I'm, still learning, but my biggest thing that I have to just keep reminding myself is it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mhm.
We can't operate within that mindset, because if we do operate within that mindset, it'll never be perfect, because it's like our version of perfect will just keep shifting. Like maybe we'll, quote, level up, and then we'll get to that point and then it's like, no, it has to be even more perfect. It's like perfection, honestly, in my opinion, it isn't attainable. So, when you catch yourself like looking at your grid, looking at other people's grids, just remember, again, it comes back to the why. It's like
Mhm.
with your content, the reality is, yes, especially nowadays, people are scrolling. They're scrolling, they're making judgments, within half a second. They're interacting with reels, within the first 2 to 3 seconds. So it's like if they see one of your reels and they see a call to action, for example, for you guys, let's say they see, something you're getting ready to launch and they are like, oh, that resonates with me. They're going to go try to figure out how to get to that point
Mhm.
from your bio. They're not going to go look at your grid and be like, oh my gosh, they have two colors similar
Right.
next to each other, right? So I think we definitely all get in our heads about it. And I think that's totally normal. I think everyone, kind of faces that challenge. But I really think just kind of coming back to, it's like the content is the most valuable piece. The content is how you're going to drive people to your business. Obviously it helps, I think at minimum, just having a cohesive brand look on your grid. So following consistent branding standards, whether that's fonts, colors, logos, even just like having the same size text across your grid. That's something that, I've seen and noticed that it looks nice. It's like when you have the same size, titles on your reel covers, for example, it really keeps that cohesiveness. So
Mhm.
I think that's something, it's like an attainable goal to strive towards. But then I think, yes, like regarding the perfectionism and everything, it's like we just have to come back to ourselves and remind ourselves, like, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, we're all just humans out here. And if you do try to make it perfect, you're just going to spend so many hours trying to make it look, exactly how you want it to look. And then truth is, you're probably going to still pick it apart, right? Because
Mhm.
it's you against you. So
Right.
that's kind of my perspective on that.
Well, that makes me feel better. So I'm just going to kind of like not worry about my grid as much as I have. I've gotten better over the years. You'd be proud of me,
Mhm.
but I used to. I think I got so caught up in what the grid looked like because I'm the brand
Mhm.
designer too on the team that
Right.
I we probably sacrificed our content, which is
Right.
not the point, right? Like people aren't going to our Instagram to just like look how pretty it is. They actually want to
Exactly.
take something from it. So focusing on that content is way more important than worrying about how your grid is laying out.
Totally. And I think too, like a couple years ago, the grid was super important. Like everyone was really focusing on the grid. But again, that was really before short form content kind of blew up. It's like that was when you could just be posting static posts and you'd still get like 100, 200 likes on every single post.
Mhm.
But it's like things are changing and it kind of comes down to like the evolvement of the social landscape. Like, yes, grid is important, keeping your branding standards, that's important, but then also really focusing on like the most important thing in social right now is the value of your content and how relatable it is, how shareable it is. So really kind of shifting your focus there as opposed to the grid, I think
Mhm.
is a good thing to keep in mind.
So let's talk about the evolvement of social. I love that you said that. So when it comes to the different forms that you can post, whether it's static, whether it's a carousel, short form video, maybe even long form video, what are you seeing either A, perform the best, or what would your suggestion be for creators out there or small businesses who have services or products as far as like those types of posts go? Because I think we all get a little confused too on like, is short form video the best? Like, is that what performs the best to bring in, a strong audience and get some of that
Mhm.
engagement or conversion? Or is it carousels? Because I feel like, in the world of social, we are mainly on Instagram. So that's why I
Mhm.
reference Instagram a lot. But we, for a while there, it was like, oh my gosh, you have to follow all these trends. You have to do all these reels. You have to do these short form videos. That's what's going to get like, that's what's going to, blow up your Instagram or like, that's where
Mhm.
you're going to get leads or conversions or engagement or whatever. And then it kind of shifted recently, I feel like, to carousels where you've got the swipes, people are engaging with it that way. I don't really know where static posts sit. So I'm just curious your thoughts on when it comes to creating content for social, is it best to have a mix of those, or do you see one that typically performs better that we should be focusing on right now? Because I think a lot of people do get confused on, should I be doing reels, static posts, carousels, all of the above? I'd be curious your thoughts on that strategy.
Yeah, so I mean, just what I've seen, within my line of work in the past couple of months, the past year, I honestly think a good healthy mix between carousels and short form video content. I think, again, coming back to the value side of things, like the more impactful the carousel you have, the higher it's going to perform. So, if you're prompting people like with a swipe to learn more about something that's educational, like of course they're gonna want to swipe and learn more. But if you're just posting pictures, with no context and it's not necessarily like enticing people to want to swipe more, then like, yeah, that one probably isn't going to perform as well. But I always, for my clients, I like to do a healthy mix. We aim for at least, of the 3 posts a week, we aim for at least one short form video content, if not two. And
Mhm,
then we'll usually do a carousel. I would say we maybe do one static post like 1 to 2 to 3 times a month. So
mhm,
we don't go crazy on the like the singular static post. Um, yeah, just because honestly, like they don't perform great. I think Instagram right now is definitely pushing carousel and short form over static.
mhm.
So, unless it's like something you're dying to post on
Right.
static, then I would probably even, because then another thing you can do is you can post a reel and then make the reel cover, whatever you were probably planning to post for the static.
Mhm,
So a lot of the times, we'll have clients who want to like advertise a promo and they'll be like, oh, let's just do like a static post. So then I recommend instead doing a reel. And then I'm like, let's do a reel where advertise the promo. And then, we can make the reel cover whatever the promo is and kind of a call to action. And then we'll pin that to their grid. just to make sure that people are always seeing that. So yeah, I really do think it's heavy on the carousels, heavy on the reels. And something I've been seeing too for TikTok is that swipe feature that's available on TikTok as well, kind of similar to the carousel style. That's actually performing really well right now, too. So any kind of like carousel posts that we do on Instagram, I make sure to go put that in TikTok as well.
Oh, that's good to know. We are not active on TikTok, so I didn't even know that they had that available now. So
Yeah,
I am
totally.
on
Definitely
research.
take advantage of that.
Yes, that's great. That's awesome. Um, so one thing too, that the world is shifting and it's evolving, and I think everybody, some people love it, some people hate it, but AI, I'm sure AI has
Mhm.
changed your landscape quite a bit, or you just get a lot of questions about it from your clients. But I am very curious about this with what you have to say too, is how does AI fit into your content creation strategies when it comes to social, particularly? A lot of people either A, feel like, oh my gosh, you can't use AI, people are going to see right through me, or, I use AI as a brainstorm tool, but I don't have it like help me write content or create that content. So I'm curious how much AI that you guys use when it comes to creating social content for your clients, and kind of what you feel about it and how you think it's going to, evolve in the world of content creation for social.
So I have a love-hate relationship with AI.
I think a lot of people do.
I
I do too.
right, of course. And I'm one of the people, honestly, I don't use AI a lot, to be completely honest, especially, you know, because my whole thing with our agency is I want to try to keep us as authentic as possible. I love using the power of the brain, but I will say the couple times that we do use AI is more like you said for brainstorming. So when we're trying to brainstorm, email content, when we're trying to brainstorm social content, we'll utilize AI to be like, for example, in, Q4, we're like, hey, it's Q4 for this client. How can we take the services that they offer and kind of tie that into like wrapping up the year, preparing for the new year? And then AI will give us some ideas for blogs, ideas for emails, ideas for social. But I mean, really, other than that, that's kind of the only source that we use it for. The one other thing I will say is we do use the Canva AI tool. So within Canva, you can ask it to create you any image. So that has been huge for one of our clients. They're located in Spain and they have this offering that they haven't actually launched yet. So, and part of the offering is they're going to be offering people a luxurious hotel stay, and it's like an all-inclusive plastic surgery vacation kind of deal. But since they've never done it, obviously they don't have pictures of what that would look like.
That's
Like they
great.
don't have pictures of the hotel that they would stay at or pictures of like a client on an airplane flying over.
Mhm.
So we'll pop into Canva and we'll just be like, hey, create me an image of a woman sitting in first class with a champagne flute and a passport in her lap looking out the airplane window, and then we'll use that to kind of advertise for them. And I will say, like, it spits out some pretty good stuff. I do think it's like if you look pretty hard at it, you can tell it's AI, which
Mhm.
is something I'm not a huge fan of. Because my personal thoughts on AI, it's like with upcoming generations, it's getting so hard to even tell like what's real anymore.
Yeah.
And I just think like for the mental health of like the younger generations, that's just not very good. Like
Mhm.
I can't see that being beneficial in any way. So yeah, I definitely try to limit it, but for like conceptualizing, brainstorming, and just kind of seeing like, even like, oh, are there certain holidays you weren't aware of? Or are there certain things that we could capitalize on, like timeliness, seasonality things?
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of how we use it. But, I hear of these other agencies who are like, oh yeah, like we use AI for everything. And, we use AI for this, we use AI for this. And that's just not me personally. I'm not super into that.
Mhm.
If it is your thing, whatever floats your boat, good for you.
Right.
But for me personally, at our agency, yeah, I try to just kind of stick to conceptualizing, brainstorming, kind of just like idea creation.
That's good to know because I think a lot of people, like you said, there's a lot of people who have that love hate with AI, which I'm one of them too. And I think when it comes to the actual content creation, like brainstorming and ideating and all of those things, AI is great for because it might have like thought of things that you didn't necessarily think of. However, when it comes to taking those ideas then and creating that content and posting it and sharing it with your audience or talking about it or storytelling, that's where you want to bring in that authenticity, right? That's where you want to bring in that expertise. And that's something
Exactly.
that AI can't do. AI can't have your voice. AI can't, be that emotional person telling a story or selling a product or launching something new. And I think that's where, you got to kind of be careful when it comes to AI. You don't want to just use AI to write all of your captions because people are going to start to realize that it's going to start to sound very robot-y. People are going to see ChatGPT has ruined the M dash. So anytime somebody's using M dash, they're
Exactly,
like,
right?
that was AI. So I think that's a really good point is just to use it kind of high level and then, get your ideas, take those and actually like build those out with your voice. Go back to your why. Make sure that you're connecting emotionally with your audience and not just copying and pasting something that AI did.
Exactly.
So
Totally.
yeah, it's definitely a fine balance.
I know, you gotta find the sweet spot.
Yes, you do. Okay, a couple more questions. So, what's one small mistake that you see creators make again and again when it comes to creating content for social?
I think it really comes down to the authenticity and just kind of remembering that it's like if you're a content creator, ultimately your goal is to build a community. So, how can you nurture that community? A lot of the times I see content creators, they'll build up this following, 10, 15, 20K plus followers, and then they start to kind of drop off when it comes to engaging with the audience.
Yep.
And, that's how you keep people coming back to your profile. Like, that's how you keep people caring about you and about what you're doing. So I think really focusing on the fact that it's like, if I'm a creator, I am building a community of people who are like-minded and who follow me for a certain reason. So how can I give back to them and make them feel like they're part of the community? Because those are your core people, right? Like
Mhm.
those are your core people who are going to be with you for the probably, years, like people who aren't going to stop following you. So if you're neglecting to engage with them, if someone's commenting or asking questions, if you can't get back to them, they're going to feel like, they're not valued and they're probably going to go look for a different creator who does the same thing but will actually get back to them and respond to them. So, I think that's a big part of it. And then I also think kind of like you mentioned with the surveys, just really being interactive with the community.
Mhm.
So, just trying to prompt them to interact with you, yeah, whether that be surveys or just asking for their feedback, asking for their opinion, even providing resources, I think is huge. Like if you can provide, value through PDFs or like a free, crash course or something, whatever that may be, just to kind of differentiate yourself in the content creator space, I think that's huge.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah, I think a lot of people, people get hung up on vanity metrics so quickly when it comes to
Totally.
social. And I've been there. I've been like, oh, we got to get to X amount of followers, or oh,
Mhm.
look at this reel blew up, and we got however many likes or engagement, whatever those vanity metrics might be. But I think this is a space where you're bringing in a specific audience, right? And like you need to nurture that audience. You can't
Mhm.
just get to 10,000 followers and you're like, hey, I made it. Like I don't really have to
Right.
engage anymore. I've got this awesome number on my profile. So when somebody comes to see it, they're going to automatically like go with us because they see, how many people are following. But that's so not the case. We've seen it with many clients where they have hundreds of thousands of followers. And,
Mhm.
um, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to convert. That number sometimes doesn't matter. People actually want to see if you're answering the questions that they have or showing up emotionally, authentically, engaging. It's all about nurturing that audience. So
Yeah.
before we go, what is this is kind of a big question too, but what is one thing that you'd want our audience to walk away from when it comes to just everything that we talked about today, what it is that you do with your clients on the daily? What's one thing that you would leave with our audience that you'd really want them to take away from today's conversation?
I would say just never forget the importance of a good strategy and just knowing your why and knowing what you want to get out of social, have that strategy. Typically it's ideal if it's conversion oriented. So it's like, what do we want? More bookings, more clients, more patients, more, you know, course signups, more product purchases. Just really building out a strategy around that is going to help you so much going forward with content, to just have a clear direction of, what content pillars do I need to hit? So then that allows you to figure out what types of content you can create. And then that allows you to figure out, what specific shots you need to get at a photo shoot. So it's like really just coming down to that strategy, figuring that out, and then allowing that to kind of guide you moving forward.
I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Of
Before we let you
course.
go, I want you to tell our audience where they can find you and if you have anything fun coming up.
Yes, so my personal Instagram handle is Kennedy Shay, Shay Smith. Our agency handle is KSC Agency. And if you want to check out our website, again, it's just kscagency.com. We are actually launching a offering with my business partner. She's in sales. So we're launching a kind of marketing and sales offering where we'll generate organic leads for clients. And then she comes in to help refine the sales pipeline and close the leads, because I think a really big problem right now is it's like companies get all these leads and then they're like, oh my gosh, I can't close any of these. Like we have tens of thousands of dollars of leads, but none of them are converting. Why? So that's when she comes into the picture. So that's kind of a super cool offering that we're working on launching. So that will be launching this quarter. And if you want to stay up to date with us, yep, you can just check out our Instagram, and we'd love to just like chat with anyone who has questions. If you have questions on social, we do offer strategy calls where you can just hop on a call. We'll talk all things strategy and get a foundation laid out for you.
I love it. Yes, please follow Kennedy. Hit her up if you have any questions about social content
Yes.
creation. I'm about ready to book you because man, it's a beast.
It is a beast. It's a beautiful
It's
beast
a
though.
beautiful. It is. It is. Well, thank you so much, Kennedy. We really appreciate you being on the Duo On Air podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
It's time for a refill. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Duo On Air.
If you loved hanging out with us today, here are 3 quick ways to support the show. 1, subscribe so you never miss a new episode.
2, share this episode with a biz bestie and tag us on Instagram at duo.collective.
And 3, leave a review because we love hearing from you.
Finally, keep sharing your episode ideas. We love creating content for you. Head over to duocollective.com to catch up on all the latest episodes, brand and website makeovers, SEO tips, and so much more.
See you there. Let's duo this thing called business together.